everybody. Thank you guys so much. Tonight is a really special night for all of us here on Southbridge Street Live. I have all 4 of the mayoral candidates, and we are going to do something that's totally never been done in Victoria before. We're live show where we're going to answer the questions that the community has for the mayor's candidates. So let me introduce you to, this is Mr. Brent Carter. This
Hello.
is Mr. Riley McCoy. I have Steve Meacham, Mr.
Yes,
Meacham, and then Mr. Vic Morgan. So I just wanted to thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your schedule. I know you guys had just come from an event, so we're going to try to get you out of here within the hour. But I would love to start with just asking a couple of preliminary questions, which is kind of like just tell us about yourself, and we'll just kind of maybe go in some kind of order. Would you like to start? Do you mind, Mr. Carter?
Sure.
So tell us about you.
Brent Carter, raised here, educated here, married to Dawn Carter, who's hiding over here in the shadows. My mom and dad live here. We grew up at Northside Baptist Church, played basketball for the Stingarees, and then went off to UT and stayed gone a while. But I came back to raise children. I've raised 3, 2 of whom are still at A&M. One has graduated, and have 2 little ones with Dawn that are 11 and 6. So
wow. That's
why I came in on 2 wheels, as I was coming in from Little League practice. But family, yes. Faith, and a desire to serve.
That's awesome. Yeah. And for you, Mr. McCoy?
Well, I too was born and raised here. I've lived my whole life in Victoria, except when I took a little vacation up to Texas A&M for a few years. Earned a couple of degrees there, masters in architecture, and then I decided to come back to Victoria to build a career.
Right.
And I've been at it for 42 years, practicing architecture here. Love Victoria. I don't ever regret coming back here. Right. It's a great place to have kids, raise kids, and I love this community. And that's why I'm running for mayor, because I think as good as we are, we can always be better.
Right.
And I just want to see this city move forward and grow and prosper.
Thank you. And for you, Mr. Meacham?
Mr. Meacham. My name is Steve Meacham. I don't know of any Mr. Meacham but my dad, but anyway. Steve Meacham, and I'm a lifelong Texan. I was born in Beaumont, raised in Waco, and then did end up moving here to Victoria about 20 some odd years ago. I've actually lived in Victoria twice. I came here once and then went back to the job that I'd left in Waco. They hired me back, and then some guys that I'd worked with here in Victoria went to work for another institution, and then they asked me to come back again. So I've been here and stayed ever since.
And you're a financial advisor?
I'm a financial advisor, and I've pretty much my entire professional career, I've worked in the financial services industry. In bank trust departments where I've managed monies there, and always pretty much been on the finance or the investment side of what happens on the bank. So I've got a mindset that thinks long term. That's what you have to do when you're helping people plan for their futures. You've got to think long term. You can't think today. And I think that's one of the things that's going to help me. I've got that mindset to help Victoria plan for a long term future, and have the financial sense to recognize that there's an expense and an expenditure side to financial government. We've got to make them match up. Right. And we've got to do it in an efficient and in a proactive manner.
Thank you. And you, Mr. Morgan?
Vic.
Vic.
Yes,
okay.
Vic.
All right. First name basis.
Yeah.
You go.
I'm a native Texan. I was born 26 miles from the geometric center of this great state and grew up there. Went off to college and have 3 degrees, including PhD in mathematics. I spent about the last 25 years of my life as a university president. And a university is a lot like a city. We have all the same problems. We have streets, we have infrastructure, we have security, we have buildings, we have all of those same things, food service, housing, all of the things that a city has, and no money, just as the city is at the universities. So I have a lot of proven leadership, a lot of experience, and I bring those to the table. I'm the newcomer in the crowd.
Are you?
Arrived here about 5 years ago, and my parents grew up married in Yoakum, Texas. I have relatives all over Eagle Lake, Hallettsville, Edna, Cuero. Had an uncle who was a mayor in Cuero, of all things, at one time. So South Texas or this part of Texas is not new to me, although I'd never been to Victoria until I drove in on Good Friday in 2014 to be here for about 6 months while UHV hired a president.
Right.
We found problems, and I was asked to stay and help them get solved.
So you're having an anniversary coming up then for Victoria.
Almost. And we solved a lot of those problems. I think at my previous college, I had about $100 million worth of capital improvements, and helped plan about $100 million worth here at UHB. So I've got that experience behind me as well. So I'm here. My wife and I have fallen in love with Victoria. We decided to retire and stay here, and it's an opportunity to give back to a community that's been great to us, and we've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Well, let me go to my second question, and we'll go around in this order again. Why did you decide to run for mayor?
As I said, it's an opportunity to give back. I have a lot of experience. I'm not very good at just retiring. Of the 4 people here at the table, I'm the only one who can devote full time to this job. So I've got the time to do it, and the interest in doing it, the experience to help me do it, and I believe it's the right thing to do, giving back to the community.
Thank you. And Steve?
As to why I wanted to do this,
yes,
it's really kind of inspiration, and to some extent, I'm going to have to say somewhat shame. Inspiration in that I was raised in a household where my parents were big servants. They had we were raised in a servant attitude.
Right.
In that deal. Vic was talking about having a mayor father or whatever. My dad was 2-time mayor of Cameron, Texas, where he lived. They still in their 80s today deliver Meals on Wheels and greet at their church and are part of the groups that when there's a funeral or something there, they go prepare for all that. So, I mean, the shame part comes in as I'm thinking, I look at how much my parents have done, and I'm going, I have not done as much. And I get back to this deal about to whom much is given, much is expected, and I've been given so much, and I got to give back. And this is one of the ways that I thought I could give back. I think I'm suited in a mindset to be able to perform in this particular role. So it was motivation by looking at the other people, the inspiration and seeing what they've done. A little bit of shame on my part. I should be doing more. And this is one of the ways that I think I could actually do more.
I really like that. Thank you very much for that. And for you, Mr. McCoy?
Well, for me, I think that I'm very qualified for this job. My whole career that I've been here, I've spent the first part of my career building a very successful business.
Right.
And then in the last probably 20, 25 years, I've done a lot of public service. I've been in Rotary for over 20 years. I even had perfect attendance for 20 years in Rotary. I've been involved in the Victoria Performing Arts Corporation when it was running the Welder Center. After I've designed the center, they asked me to stay on and join their board, and we helped run that center for several years before it was gifted to Victoria College. I've been active on 2 commissions of the city, the Building and Standards Commission and the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. Gosh, I was asking Rick Madrid the other day how long I'd been on those committees, and it was probably in the 20-year range that I've served on those committees, commissions and boards, and I actually rose to the chairman of both of them before I had to resign in order to run for this office. So I've been active there. I've been active lately with the Gulf Bend Community Initiative collaboration on mental health. We've done a lot of work in the last 4 years trying to get to the point where we're diverting people with mental illness from the jails and emergency rooms into care. I helped author the documents that were sent to the legislature that got us $1.3 million for that initiative. And I've been for the last 4 years or 4 to 5 years involved with the Texas Society of Architects Government Affairs Committee. I was actually supposed to be in Austin this morning to testify on a bill, and I had to get somebody to cover for me, 2 guys to cover for me there. So I'm very active in that way, because sometimes the city, you do what you can with the city, but sometimes you need help from the states. You have to be well connected in Austin as well. So I have those connections and use them quite often. My friend A.J. Louderback used to say, you know, politics is a contact sport. You better be in contact with them. So I'm at a point in my life where I'm kind of slowing down in my own business. I've got a very good staff that pretty much takes care of the day-to-day operations. We just bid a $50 million project down in Gregory, Portland for a school down there, which, by the way, is larger than any single project the city of Victoria has ever done. And I manage some projects. Some years I manage $100 million worth of work in a single year. So I'm very familiar with infrastructure, construction. I know how public entities are supposed to procure construction. So I have a lot of experience, a wealth of experience, and it is hands-on experience.
Sure. Is that
So,
the why?
Well,
that
that's
the
why I think I
why?
can make a difference as mayor of Victoria, because I really understand the issues that they're talking about. We're talking about new development ordinances, and that's going to take somebody that really understands the Government Code 211 versus 212. I read those documents. That's what I've been doing for 4 years with the Texas Society of Architects, reading statutes, getting familiar with statutes. So it's all of that knowledge that I've acquired. I told somebody the other day, about the time you acquire all this knowledge, people want to put you in over in the corner somewhere, and I want to share it.
That's right.
So
Oh,
that's
awesome.
why I think I could be a very effective mayor.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Brent?
I just really want to stop and give Raleigh a Lifetime Achievement Award right now. But on a serious note, I just think Victoria deserves better. We just deserve more than we've got. I couldn't help but think, as you were telling me that, all these years and all these things you've done, and I was gone for a long period of time and came back and found the same Victoria I left. And it's time for that to change. It's time for Victoria to embrace the 21st century. It's time for us to move forward as a community and embrace the things that make Victoria special. We're mired in a perpetual state of mediocrity that I think is perpetuated by people just doing what they've always done. It's time to get out of a comfort zone. It's time to step out there and show the world that Victoria, Texas is open for business. It's time for us to step up and demand more out of our council. We're hiring a new city manager. He knows 211 and 212. You need somebody that can meet the next Caterpillar at the airport and say, we want you here, and here's what we're willing to do to get you here. We want you to bring your jobs. We do a radio show. My hand's on the pulse of the community all the time. I'm a commercial insurance agent. When Raleigh designs a building, I insure that. When somebody buys it, I insure that. When somebody moves into it, I insure them. All ships rise on an incoming tide, and it's time that we get that tide flowing into Victoria. I'm thrilled that so many have done so much for so long, but it's time to do something new and different and take this city to the next level, and I'm running because I'm the guy to do that.
I see. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start opening up some questions. And Riley, I'm going to start with you, sir. Where do you align yourselves politically? Liberal, Democrat, moderate, Republican, or conservative?
Well, I've been a Republican all my life, and I'm conservative when we need to be conservative in physical matters. I'm extremely conservative. I believe you have to be able to pay for things you want to do, but there is also a side of me that has compassion for people who are less fortunate. And so I think you can still be conservative, and you can be very frugal with your with funds and things. But I honestly think that part of making Victoria a better city is to make it better for everybody, because that's the one thing the mayor is. He is the only at-large council member that's elected in the city of Victoria. And when he's elected, that means that he or she represents everybody. and everybody should have the equal access to the mayor of Victoria with their issues and problems, because everybody has a passion for what they need. And I think you can take a mayor that inspires people to move forward. You don't need to be the one that's just telling people what to do all the time. You need to inspire people. You need to listen to people and guide them where they want to go. And that's what I believe that my beliefs are.
Thank you. And for you?
Real quickly, I mean, if I have to wear a label,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to have to say I'm probably a Republican if I have to wear a label. But one of the things I love that we don't have to do
Right.
in this particular election is we don't have to wear a label. Nobody filed as a Republican or as a Democrat or a liberal or conservative or anything.
Okay, for mayor.
For mayor, as
That's
it relates
awesome.
to that.
I did not know that. Thank
No,
you.
you do not. We don't
Right.
we don't wear those labels, and I think labels too oftentimes divide us. When you start to put those labels on, it becomes divisive. I've had people ask me when I said I wanted to run. They said, "Well, what are you going to run as? You're going to run as this?" I don't have to run as anything.
Right.
I'm running as a Victorian, and if we can all take that attitude in that deal, let's get rid of the labels.
Okay.
And so,
Sure.
I appreciate the question.
No, thank you very much for your candor. I appreciate that. And you, Mr. Morgan?
I'm probably more of an independent than I am any one of the labels that are up there, simply because in my position as a university president, I have to work with whomever is elected to whatever position they're in. I've spent, it seems like half my life in Austin and in Washington dealing with politicians and political issues and testifying and doing those things. But I've never declared myself in a party of any kind because I have to work with whomever gets elected.
I see.
As I said, I'm the newcomer on the block here. I am conservative with resources. I've had to be because that's what the universities are, is not very wealthy. And I also am very much have new ideas, different perspectives. I'm not locked into the same old thing that we've always done. I bring a fresh perspective to the city council, to the city government.
Thank you. And you
Well, just to answer the question, I'm conservative. I just went back in my head. I think the first presidential election I voted for Ronald Reagan, and I don't think I've voted for a Democrat for president since. But I have voted against some people more than I've voted for others, and which is just a personal prerogative. But I'm just an unashamed conservative.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so this next one will go to you, Steve. It is, how do you plan to involve residents in decision-making process in Victoria, particularly young adults? So what is the decision-making process in Victoria, and how do you involve residents?
Well, especially when you're talking about young adults, I've got a young adult in the sense that I've got a kid that just graduated this last year from West High School, and he's enrolled now. He's in the fire academy here at the Victoria College, and he's pursuing that. That's what he thinks he wants to do. That young adult, when you talk about getting them involved in the decision-making process, I don't know if you would have maybe read this in the paper or whatever, but that young adult influenced me to run for mayor. I'd been talking to him about it for a long period of time, and we were talking about some hurdles that were in front of me as it related to me being able to do that. And he told me, he said, "Dad, I'd be really, really disappointed if you didn't do it." And it's really hard to with young people to preach a certain thing and then not actually put feet to action in that deal. So I felt like I need to put my feet to action in that deal. So young people have a big influence on me. I think they've got a lot to offer, and they don't necessarily have all the experience that the people around this table have to offer, but they've also got fresh ideas. I mean, they know things that I don't know. It's kind of like, I mean, just in today's world, they know things that I don't know, and they're going to be the people that are going to live in this town. So when I was talking about thinking long term. Who am I building this town for? What's my vision for this town? My vision for this town is for the people that are going to live out here, live their lives out here, and that's going to be the young people. So they have to be involved in this process. And oftentimes, I just don't think they know how to be involved in the process.
How do they get involved?
you come and ask some of these guys that have the experience. Some of us this evening were just at a little community involvement meeting, and one of the things that they were talking about, the issues that are happening on the south side of Victoria. And I encouraged them. I said, this is a great group that y'all started with right here. But if you're going to push these issues forward, you've got to grow this base. You've got to grow this group. And I said, you need to do things as a community and in your blocks and in your neighborhoods before you can spread it to all of Victoria. It has to happen with y'all. Young adults, whatever they want to be involved, they need to start on their own, and then they expand from there. I mean,
I see where we're going with that. Thank you. Mr. Morgan?
For me, young people have been my life.
Yeah.
As a university president, as a dean of students, as a student affairs vice president, as an academic dean, 57 years of college experience is working with young people. I know how to work with young people. I know how to get them involved. It was young people that got us the university center at UHV. They went, I went with them, but I didn't have to do anything. They were the people that stood up and spoke to the legislature to get a bill passed to tax themselves, literally, to build that student center. And they got it done in both houses. It's an interesting process to watch young people work, but the university is not all that Victoria is about, and those young people are not all that Victoria is about. It's about the young professionals that need to come and stay and choose to live here and raise their families, just as some of you have done, coming back to Victoria. But a lot of people need to come who aren't coming back, and they need to learn to live here and visit here and to stay here. And you've got to listen to what they want and what they need, and then begin to mold the city and shape the city to provide those amenities that is going to give them something to do, that are going to keep them involved and keep them in Victoria. And so you literally have to get out and you've got to listen to the people. And that's one of my strong suits is visiting and listening.
Thank you.
We've got to find a way to keep our best asset home, which is our young people. And the key to me is just continuing to demand more out of our education. We've got to get VISD on a productive track where people want to move here because they want the kids to be in our schools. We've got to find a way then to continue to demand more out of Victoria College and the University of Houston, Victoria, to where we can pull those kids through, whether it be vocational training that gets in the plants where they want to be, or fire training like Steve's son is doing, or whatever it is that allows those young people to assimilate back into this community. Victoria has become notorious for being a good place to be from and a good place to raise kids.
Right.
But the kids leave. I've got 3 that are gone, and I look at this as an opportunity for the 2 that I have at home to do my part to make Victoria a place that they want to live and thrive. And Victoria's been very good to me. I make a very good living here, and it's off of Victorians. But I wasn't educated here and in college. And I want this to be a place where the kids want to stay. And then if there's enough of them, then you've got to address them. That's how you get them involved, is you've got to, businesses will come. If there's 6,000 students at UHV, there's going to be more restaurants. There's going to be more retail. There's going to be more things to do, quote unquote.
Right.
Although I know that if these guys around this table are honest, we've had plenty to do. There's plenty to do in this town. It's just you got to get out and get involved. But the key is to get the kids educated very strongly here at home, and then make them want to stay here.
Can I ask you before I let you answer the question, is can we talk really quickly about that, about city council meetings? Because it's one of the ways that young adults coming into the decision-making process is that you guys are all part of a city council, and that you have an opportunity for the public to come and speak.
Sure.
During the times that you guys meet. You guys meet twice a month At 5 p.m.? Yes, and where is that meeting at?
At
It's
council
at-
chambers.
At the
Oh,
council
yeah.
chambers, thank you. That's another way, I just wanted to interject there first.
May I say something
Yes,
about that?
absolutely, I would like for you to, it's your turn.
I don't know why we always have to meet at the city council chambers. I think there's opportunity in this community where council could go out to people, maybe have a council meeting at the university. There's a lot of things that we could do to be different and engage our community. There's a time and a place for the meetings that the city has that require structure. But I think, and I've talked to several of the council members about it, I think when there's specific types of issues that come up that are really important issues, they need to be in work sessions where they're more of a conversation than a formal back and forth. And I think young people would relate better to that if they were watching something like that. If they saw an engaged council together talking about the issues that affect this community, I think they would take more interest in it, quite frankly. And you would invite them to do so. But you could have that meeting at the community center. You could have that meeting at the Leo Welder Center. There's plenty of places you could go to be more accessible
Right,
to the community.
because one of the things that you had
That's
said
my
earlier
spiel.
was that it was 5 minutes, and you felt like that's not enough time.
Right. I mean, but, you know, when they come up to speak, it's a situation where the citizens can speak, but they have 5 minutes, and council technically isn't supposed to engage in any conversation. We have to find a way to engage the community in conversation, and then challenge them. That's the only way we're going to get this community motivated and moving forward again. It's got to be everybody in a conversation,
Yes, sir.
and that's my take on it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Morgan, if you were mayor, how would you plan to intend to retain city employees, specifically law enforcement?
Well, that takes resources, money, because as I understand it, the reason that law enforcement and the first responders leave is their health insurance and their salaries. And so you've got to figure out ways to augment those to help them make a sufficient living for their families, so that they don't go someplace else. There's no point in our training all these people and then exporting them to other cities. One of the things that you have to do is you have to look at the city's resources. You have to strategically plan and involve people to decide what's important and where can you find resources to take care of the key issues, whether it be the streets or whether it be the salaries for employees, or whether it be other benefits that would cause those employees to want to stay and continue to work here. But you've got to plan those things. You've got to prioritize what's the most important thing to you, and then see where you can find the resources to make those priorities a reality.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
As far as retaining city employees, I think it's very important for the city that we maintain that continuity in the departments, the various departments, any department, whether it's water and sewer, whether it's trash pickup, whether it's police, fire, whatever. There needs to be continuity within those programs. That's the whole point about retaining city employees. But I'm going to also tell you one of the things that when I have run or worked in areas at the bank, when I was employed at a bank, and I wanted my particular area that I employed people in to be seen as an opportunity. Like, if I worked in this area, I was probably going to do something bigger and better than that. In many instances, especially as it relates to law enforcement here, we have a police academy where we train law enforcement right here.
Yes, sir.
We've got a steady supply of them coming in here. I mean, we don't have enough place for all of them that we produce. But we ought to give them an opportunity to where whether or not they decide to stay or not, their trip here, the time that they spent with us was valuable time. They got something out of that employment with us right here that took them to somewhere else that made them bigger and better. So it doesn't have to necessarily be just to retain them, but that they got something out of the experience of being employed here.
Thank you. I think I went out of order. I knew I was
It's
gonna
okay.
mess it up.
I mean, I'm ready to address it.
Sure.
When you say specifically law enforcement, I can tell you that I've got a very specific plan. My background or my vocation is commercial insurance, and no, I wouldn't be trying to sell the city insurance while I was mayor. But the way to retain the employees, specifically law enforcement, is through a comprehensive plan where we will take the first responders, police, fire, and EMS, roughly 250, 260 employees total. We're going to take the incremental cost of that, whether it be Q-tips, Band-Aids, a couple of nurses, a new PA, and a receptionist, let's say. We're going to take that, we're going to roll them right into the county's clinic program that is involved at the Patty Dodson. I've had extensive conversations with Dr. John McNeil, with Diana Galvan, with Judge Zeller about just about day 2, starting to work on how we're going to roll that in. There'll be some incremental cost. It will not be a tax increase. We will prioritize the budget, because as T. Michael O'Connor looked me right in the face and said, you can't look at law enforcement as an expense. You have to look at law enforcement and the safety of your citizens as an investment in your community. And that's definitely, it's an investment I want to make in those folks, men, women, EMS, firemen, and police officers. It's something that's been embraced very openly by the fire chief and by Chief J.J. Craig. We've had candid conversations about it. They want to stem the flow of our well-trained police officers from going other places. So that's the key way to do it. You tell that officer, yes, if you have an appendicitis off duty at home, you've still got a $2,500 deductible. But if mama has a sick baby, she can take that baby to the clinic just like the county folks do. And that's going to help us retain those folks. And it's definitely in the works.
It's in the works. Thank you.
Well, I feel somewhat the same way, because I look at our city, all of our city employees, and especially our first responders. To me, they're infrastructure. They're part of the essential needs that a city must have. And I'm glad to hear you've been having conversations. I've had similar ones with Danny Garcia about the county's health insurance plan. Something has to be done. I was at the meeting the night that they discussed the health care issue, and I couldn't believe it. They're putting up on a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm sitting there looking at it and said, you mean these guys are going to have to put $4,000 to $6,000 out of their pocket before they get $1 of insurance? That's not insurance.
That's right.
That's not insurance. And I was dumbfounded. And I sat there and listened to it. And I even went out and asked, I think, John Kaminsky if that many can't, because they described they had a lot of payments done. I asked him, can't you buy some catastrophic coverage to protect you in a 2-tiered thing? And the answer was, well, I think we've looked at it. Well, I think we looked at it isn't a good enough answer. We need to be looking at all aspects of it. You know, you've sold a lot of insurance in your career, but I've bought a lot of insurance in my career, trust me. And I tell you, that's one of the biggest things. You talk about retaining people in Victoria. Ever since I went on my own in 1995, I have paid my employees health insurance 100%. You know why I do that? Because I don't want one of my employees sitting there worrying about where's he going to get the money to pay this horrendous medical bill when they can be concentrating. So it's a smart business decision, not only just the right thing to do. But when I heard those gentlemen come up to that mic and talk about how they love this community, and they came here, some of them came here because of Victoria, and now they're going to be forced to leave because they don't have any health insurance benefit. They simply can't afford it. And the problem is the training that Dr. Morgan mentioned earlier, that Vic mentioned, excuse me.
Thank you.
Thank you. It costs a lot of money. You know, I couldn't run my business bringing people in and training them. That's why I have a profit sharing plan that's kind of, you have to buy into it over time.
Yes.
to keep them. You want to do things that retain them. And that's what we need to be doing as a city. We owe it to these first responders. When you ask somebody to go out in the middle of the night and they may not come home again, that's a special person. And they need to be thought of in those terms. And what really got me is the next week I go to the meeting and they come up with $600 and something thousand to fund the health insurance accounts that they set up. They actually set up health insurance accounts that had no money in them. Well, what good is that? And so then all of a sudden you had $600 and something thousand for that. And then the next week, almost in a routine gesture, they passed $700 and some odd thousand to buy a piece of property out here for a future police training station that they may or may not build in the next 5 to 10 years. Well, to me, it's prioritizing that money. Maybe that's a good idea when it's needed, but right now we need to take care of these employees. In my business, when my business started really growing, is when the day I made up my mind that my employees are the most valuable asset my business has. And when you look at your employees that way, you build a great organization. And that's the way the city needs to think about our employees.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Brent, the next question is, how would you define the economy of Victoria?
Too reliant upon the oil field and stagnant.
Okay.
I think that there are other parts of the state that seem to be booming. I know our state's having a tremendous influx. I think it's 1,100 people a day move into the state. That number may even be low. I think Victoria's too reliant on the oil field, and which brings back to, I know it's a hammered point, but we've got to show the world that Victoria, Texas is open for business. We've got to review anything, any ordinance, anything that impedes, that makes anybody say, well, I'd rather just go to El Campo than come to Victoria because of this impedance or this problem or this ordinance. And I think that's the number one thing. We're just, to answer the question, it's stagnant and it's too reliant upon the oil field. And then obviously we have plans to make it diversify.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Morgan, Vic.
Well, I believe that Victoria is in a position that is ready to grow. Our location is nearly ideal for all sorts of businesses. We just have to get out there and find them. And one of the things that I think we can do, especially with our young people, is we can create an entrepreneur opportunity for young people to start and build their own businesses. And that's what the Small Business Development Center that happens to be housed at Laurent Tower right now, I believe,
Yes, sir.
is about. It helps young people who have ideas implement those and get them going. I think that's one of the things that we talked on with the group on the south side about. They need washateria, they want a grocery store, they want convenience stores. That Small Business Development Center can help creative people get those things going and keep them going. It's not just getting them started and then kick them out the door and say, now go on your own. It takes a lot of energy and effort to make a business prosper. And the Small Business Development Center can do that. That's not the only way we're going to build the economy, but it is a way that needs to be emphasized, and people need to know that those opportunities are there. You got a lot of college graduates that would love to stay here, and as the programs expand and they have new ideas, and especially in technology, they're wonderful opportunities to build our economy.
Thank you. Steve?
Well, that's an interesting question about how you define the economy of Victoria. I've always thought of Victoria, especially because since I moved here twice, I thought of what did I think about Victoria when I was coming here, and I thought of it as a regional hub. We've always been a regional financial center, a regional retail center. We were a regional medical facility for a long time as well, with the hospital system that we had here and the doctors that we had here. But apart from thinking about how you define Victoria's economy today, that's what it is. I think we ought to be talking more about the vision of the economy going forward. And I was looking at and I know Dr. Morgan has also seen this deal, and if y'all haven't seen it, I was reading a paper today that was written by Dr. Ray Perryman that he wrote for the Texas Economic Development Council, and it really explains economic development in a way that me as an economist, if you will, understood. Why do businesses come to a particular spot? Well, they come for comparative advantage. There has to be some advantage about why they come here, because they've got to turn a dollar back out on the back end for whoever their shareholders are or whoever the owners of the business are. I mean, it has to produce a dollar on the back end. What are the comparative advantages that we have as a community? And Dr. Morgan talked about that. I have mentioned in other meetings, we sit here in the Golden Crescent. We sit here at the crossroads. We can look around. I mean, we do have this shallow water port at the Port of Victoria. We're about to have a designation as an interstate designation on I-69. We sit within 155 miles of 5 deep water ports. There are things that, I mean, and also in Dr. Perryman's paper, he talked about how oftentimes industries that have that comparative advantage or that have just figured out what that is, oftentimes they cluster. And you think about what's happened here in Victoria, and when Brent, when you grew up here, or you look up and down the coast, the plants and the facilities that we have up and down the coast, many of them do similar type things. And it's because their workforces are interchangeable to a great extent. They all know they're all process people, and they know they're engineers, and they know that's how you end up. I mean, it's that cluster. And also that cluster supports other businesses that are tied to that. I know one of you gentlemen raise your hand one of your financial supporters, Robbie Burge. Brent. Robbie Burge, for instance, you know, on that deal, owns Clean Corp. Clean Corp, what do? They clean up, they provide materials and stuff that cleans up for spills and accidents at these plants. That's one of those cluster jobs. That's one of those things, because we've got that, there are other things that come with it. And so if we can continue to work on the things that we've already got, expand from that cluster mentality, I think that provides us a real opportunity to use our comparative advantage here in Victoria.
And we do.
And we do
have a
that.
comparative
I
advantage.
think we do.
That's
I absolutely believe we do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's also one of those entrepreneurial things that happened in Victoria.
Yes.
Well, Victoria used to be a lot of innovators in Victoria. A lot of people don't realize the precast concrete industry in the state of Texas, and maybe a lot of it in the United States, was right here in Victoria with the Bass Brothers and Texas Concrete, two of the largest precast concrete manufacturers in the area. That was back in the 50s, early 60s, when I was getting into the business. They were the models. Victoria Machine Works, if you ever used to go out there and see what the Swobodas were doing out there, they were doing business all over the world. They were building the Hunt Brothers diving bells and things in the North Sea. I mean, we had innovative people in manufacturing. Safety Steel was vibrant, steel fabrications and everything. What happened to all of that? You know, it's like when those men kind of got passed on, we lost the innovators in Victoria. We need to recapture innovation in Victoria and get this economy moving, because we are idling. We have been idling for a long time, and we need to attack it from all areas. We need vibrant retail that attracts industry, or you can argue that industry attacks retail. It doesn't matter. We need both. You have to have both. One of the biggest things that we missed an opportunity years ago, and you'll remember this, Vic, because I think we talked to you. Steve Roth and I put together a deal to build an event center here in Victoria. We did all the research. We found the perfect model for it in Cedar Park, Texas. It was almost too good to be true, a public-private partnership. Required a public entity to be involved in doing the basic building. If I remember the numbers right, Cedar Park put in something around 36, 38 million to build the basic thing. They had a private group that came in on top of it and put 12 million of their own money into finishing out the thing for the events that they would host in there, hockey, rodeos, concerts, and everything. And it was a beautiful setup because the city of Cedar Park, where did they get the funds to pay for it? In all the sales tax it generated. When you put 5,000 to 10,000 people in an arena or in a center on a regular basis, you can do a lot. And I think we talked to the university about that could be the place where they would have their basketball seasons, volleyball seasons.
Any of the athletics.
We tried to bring it all together, and yet at the point when you set people in a room and asked the first guy to put his toe in the water, nobody was willing to do it. And Steve and I put a lot of our own effort. Steve even flew to China at one point to see if there was an investor that through the university and talked about it. We tried our best to get a center. Now we need to start talking about things like that again that get a city motivated and bring people here. We have the wherewithal to do it. We just need to roll up our sleeves and get to work at making Victoria move again.
Right.
And I know all of the technical stuff about it, and the things you have to do, what drives this, and what you have to do. But the main thing is you got to get started and do it.
Right.
Because there's a lot of smart people in Victoria that can make it happen once they decide we're going to do it. Victoria's its own worst enemy. We're not going to be any better than we think we are. And until we start thinking that we can be something better, we're not going to be better. So we just need to have a real big attitude change.
Thank you. All right, so I completely lost where I was going in the order which I was going, but since we're all answering the same question, everybody feels like we're fair in the time that you guys have had. So let me start with you and then just ask you, what about the homeless population? The plan or the goal in addressing the homeless population? Panhandling, that's a big issue.
Are you asking me?
I'm so sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
No, I
Wake
apologize.
up, Raleigh, wake up. I know you got time.
Waiting for your wisdom there, you know.
Man, I was like dozing off, but I'm here now.
You know.
What do you think? Well, because I heard crisis
Well,
the other
excuse me
day.
for getting excited.
I got you. Get excited.
No,
I heard crisis, but really what defines crisis? Are we really in a crisis with homeless?
It is a problem. It's a big problem, and we can't ignore it. And you can, I mean, you know what the problems are. I mean, many of it's drug dependency, many of it's mental health issues and stuff. Now you can argue what drives each one, but the fact of the matter it is, I can tell you for a fact, we have breakfast at a place on Thursday mornings. I routinely have to give a gentleman a little bit of money to eat breakfast. I'm going to a Lenten dinner the other day at Trinity. I get out of my car, I'm walking, and a lady walks up to me with a bag and asks me, could I please help her with some money for her children's drinks. Now, you know, you can argue whether she's really needing it or not, but I tell you what, it's not my duty to determine what she needs or not. I'm going to give it to her.
Right.
So we do have a problem here, and it's going to take, again, the community to recognize we have a problem, and we need to solve it. I've been helping the people out at Promise Point out there. We did layouts for them to try to get that done, but it takes the community to come together, and the community needs to come together and try to take care of the problem, do what we can. We need to mobilize our churches and everybody. We need to personally recognize that we have a problem. Denying we have a problem, because for me personally, if there's one person sleeping under a bush in Victoria tonight, that's one too many. But having said that, I'm not naive enough to think that we can solve the problem to get everybody where they need to be into a home. But if you don't set that as your goal, to eliminate that one person, then you'll never take care of the people you need to.
Thank you.
Okay?
I appreciate that.
There's always going to be transitional homelessness. There's always going to be people that just like there's always going to be transitional unemployment. I think what we find in Victoria is that there is a crisis in Victoria for those roughly 110 folks that we know of that are chronically homeless right now. And I'm thinking about the folks that are sleeping out behind Lowe's, or the people that literally don't have a roof over their head. I've spent, ashamedly, a lot more time in the last year focusing on this than I ever did before. I thought I had my own problems, and then you start realizing that when you have access to a lifelong friend like Jim Cole, and you can talk about Promise Point, and Jim will look you in the face and say, if they got money for tattoo, beer, and cigarettes, they can pay rent to live out here, and I applaud that. I'm for a hand up, not a handout. And I love the idea, which we'll get to that panhandling in a second, but I like the idea of the best way to address the homeless population is to address the reason for the homelessness, what city council can affect, which is how we drive the economy, how we encourage new business, how we try to employ everybody, and how we work with people like Chief Boyd, who's been such a proponent, A.J. Louderback, huge proponents of not incarcerating those that have mental issues, but finding a place to provide for them. It's a multifaceted deal. There's a lot of well-meaning people here in town. I'm blessed, as I know we all do, spend time with Trish Hastings over at Christ's Kitchen. You go in there and spend a morning, you will leave proud and humbled. Right. Because there's folks in need, with lots of need. And Dawn has helped me with that substantially, where she's just like, it's not right. You know, we've got to find a way to help those folks. But when it comes to panhandling, I am convinced that the majority of our panhandlers here in town are not our chronically homeless. A lot of them are brought in, they're managed by people, they are handled by people to basically beg for funds that are then apportioned out to them in small amounts, and some of it goes to the handler. I know that when I go to other cities that are vibrant and growing, New Braunfels and places that are, you would say, are happening, they don't have a panhandling problem. But I still come back to the idea that if we can present a city that is open for business, those businesses will come, those folks will have opportunities, and the homeless population will decrease naturally over time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Morgan?
Homelessness is a problem that the community faces. It's not any one group or organization. It's going to take pulling a lot of different groups from the city and the county and the nonprofits and the businesses and others to address if we're gonna deal with that. It's been said it's the cause of homelessness that we've got to look at, and that's why it takes the whole community to look at all those different causes and to try to figure out what we do to resolve some of those. Probably of equal importance is the affordable housing issue. I watched a community out in West Texas that literally priced itself out of employees because it got too expensive. And Victoria is not an inexpensive place to live. Marfa, Texas, the people out of Houston, the art community out of New York and other places came in and were buying up houses like crazy, and the prices went through the roof, and the schools can't hire teachers because they require them to live in the community, and the teachers can't afford the housing. And we have people that work in restaurants, we have people that drive ambulances, we have people that do all sorts of things that aren't highly paid. And so the affordable housing issue and the homelessness seem to go hand in hand. They're distinctly different problems, but we've got to address them all. And it takes the whole community to do that. It's not something that any one group or organization is going to be able to address and fix.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I absolutely agree with what Dr. Morgan said about that. I will tell you, when you go back and you look, for instance, at the city's mission statement, the city's mission statement is to provide public service or public services to enhance the livability of our community. Homelessness is not a public service. Now, I will also tell you, you know, we talk about the homelessness there and panhandling, and it's interesting that those two show up in the same question, because I actually do volunteer at Christ Kitchen every single week. I'm down there every Wednesday. If somebody wants to come and eat a meal that I probably cooked, you can take a chance on it.
Wednesdays are the
Wednesdays
days,
is
the
it's
day
my
to
day.
do it.
Yeah, so
Perfect.
be careful
Thank you.
on Wednesday. But the people that I watch come through that line are not the people that I see standing out on the street corners.
Right.
And I mean, those people, and again, those people are there, and nobody checks up on any kind of need or anything like that.
Yeah.
You could have a job and do whatever, and if you think you just need a little help, maybe I need help with a meal today, you come there and get that meal. But those are not, the homeless and the panhandlers are not the same people. While that shows up in the same question, that's not the same folks. But it is going to take an effort amongst all of us as a community, as individuals, as the churches, as your service groups, as to whatever. But I will tell you, one of us is going to have a role in playing in that as well, because whether you're going to wear the hat of mayor, somebody at this table is going to wear the hat of mayor. When you're wearing that hat, you're a leader in this community. And that does not necessarily mean that I only lead on the things that happen at the city council level. You got to lead outside of that deal, because I'm a leader in this community. Whoever wears that hat is going to have to be a leader in the community outside of just the function of city government.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me go back to you and say, what about your plan on helping small businesses across the community?
Small business, it's interesting that I've, over the last some months, read in the paper every now and then about some guy that's closed a business. When you read that stuff, they'll tell you, well, doing business here in town, it was just too hard. Or that something wasn't working for them as it related to what was doing business in this city. As a council and as a city, we need to make sure that those kind of little things that maybe would be a little encumbrance or something that somebody doesn't know how to get around, some zoning issue or something that happens with the planning commission or some of those kind of things, that we can knock down those walls. Make those things go away to the extent that we can. And so just make it easier for small business, because small businesses don't know what big businesses know. It gets back to when Brent made the comment with our new city manager, he's going to know code so and so and so and so. Well, big businesses, they got somebody that works on their staff that knows all the answers, and they can go get somebody.
That's right.
A small business can't go get anybody, and we just need to be more accessible in helping them through the process about how to run their small business, start their small business in this community.
Thank you.
That's what the SBDC does, is they work with small businesses. One of the things that the community needs to do is they need to develop pride in the community. And we need to talk a lot about what that means. It means keeping your streets clean. It means not throwing out the litter. But it means more than that. It means shopping at home. You know, it's really interesting. I've been at 2 colleges and been the president there, and I've emphasized to everybody that I came in touch with that you need to shop at home. The internet is a wonderful thing, and it's fun to go to Houston or San Antonio or Austin. You can't save any money doing that generally because of the cost of the trip. But if you plan to shop at home, you're dealing with the business people who support every single thing that goes on in this community. The kids in the schools who sell the ads to their yearbooks or their calendars for their athletic events or the other things that they do, they go to every one of those businesses and ask them to buy. And guess what? Those businesses buy. So why don't we in turn take care of those businesses by shopping at home? Why don't we make that a theme or the emphasis of what we do, just as we emphasize, take pride in Victoria and pick up the litter, keep the litter off the streets, clean up the entrances to town to make it a more inviting place. Those sorts of things matter. Now, you're not going to change the fact that people like the internet and like to shop on the internet. On the other hand, somebody's got to deliver all that stuff. So you're creating jobs with those people on that. But it still matters that you shop at home, because those are the people that support the things that the city does, the schools do, the colleges do, The churches do. It's those businesses that support all of those activities. If we don't support them, they're going to disappear.
Thank you very much.
Well, you talk about leading outside of the council chambers with the radio show that we do, and the fact that in general I'm fairly approachable. People come up, and I've heard so many horror stories about folks dealing with the bureaucrats down at City Hall, and it's not the council. It's dealing with ferreting your way through the system of the city of Victoria. And what I'm committed to do, and I believe the new city manager is going to be the same way, I'm committed to creating a bureaucracy downtown that helps people, pulls them through the system instead of putting up roadblocks. And I've got dozens of stories, sidewalks to nowhere. You want to add on to that, you've got to do this, this, and this. And yet the city forces that stuff back on the small business owner who's like, well, I would renovate my space, but I can't afford to put 800 foot of sidewalk and a new fire plug, so I won't renovate my space. And yet the city is going to make them do that and then collect taxes on the increased value forever. We've got to go in and look at any ordinance that does anything but encourage small business growth. We've got to be a city that encourages development. And we've got to do it. Obviously, there's laws. There's reasons for certain laws. You've got to have ingress and egress, and I get all that. But there's got to be a way to go back and evaluate why things that sign ordinances that are just obscure and stupid. If you want to go out and fly a balloon off the side of your property to invite people to your furniture sale, knock yourself out. If the community doesn't like it, they won't go to your furniture store. If the community likes it, why are you having to pay a fee for that? It's not a significant enough fee to make a dent in any of our infrastructure problems anyway.
Right.
Let's just do what makes sense and encourage small business to flourish here. It's pretty simple.
Thank you so much.
Well, it gets back to understanding what's in 211 and 212, because those type of documents are created by a bureaucracy, but many times they need somebody that truly understands them to build a little more flexibility into them. Because I think what happens in the city when they go through the development process down there, you have a lot of people that just read that code verbatim, but there's always exceptions to it. And I don't hear too many people that go in there having the staff actually point out to them there are other options here for you to use, but we're not telling you about it. And I don't know what's because, I don't know what the reason is. I'm not going to ascribe motive to it, but I can tell you that there's a lot of things in there. If you understand them well enough, there are exceptions and alternatives to use. Just like downtown development. I've had discussions with the fire marshal. There's the regular code, there's historical building codes, there's existing building codes. There are products that are new that I'm aware of that you can use paints that are very fire resistant. Perhaps the fire marshal, if you understand the intent of the code, he knows what you're going to do. Perhaps that could replace a sprinkler system in a building. We have to be more creative in how we engage folks when we're asking them to do something. I truly believe that if a person goes into our development department and they sense that they have been given every option that's possible for them, and that staff works with them, even if they ultimately have to end up doing something that they wish they didn't have to do, they'd be a heck of a lot more accepting of it. If they knew that staff worked as diligently as they could to try to help them avoid having to do that expense. And that's called service. That's called service that you do in your business.
Yes, sir.
I do in my business. You do in your business. That you do with students. It's service. It's serving the public, the best interests of the public. But that's how we have to change an attitude of how we do business down there. You welcome a person in, and you offer them all the alternatives you can to help them avoid having to do things that may or may not make sense to them.
I see. Thank you.
So,
thank you very much. So the cost of living in Victoria, Mr. Morgan? Dr. Morgan? Vic?
Vic? I don't know what you do about the cost of living. It's an interesting concept, and it's high here compared to other communities our size. That impacts, obviously, teachers, firemen, policemen, everybody. It impacts salaries. It impacts what we can recruit and what we can do. I don't know how you lower that without blowing up the economy, getting the economy up to the point where everything is paying for itself, where the city sales taxes are doing the things you want them to do, and going from there. But I don't have an answer for the cost of living. That's covers too many areas.
Too many areas. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
We could argue forever about the cost of living here in Victoria, about whether it's good or whether it's high or whether it's low. I can find you all kinds of comparisons. I mean, I was watching today on ESPN. They were talking about Rick Barnes might have a new job coaching basketball at UCLA, and the $3.5 million that he makes at the University of Tennessee, that would equate to, based upon a cost of living index, that would equate to a $6.5 million salary in Los Angeles, based upon what it's cost to live. So we can argue all the time about what it costs to live in a place. Regardless of that, what it costs to live here, one thing that we do need to work on is we need to be doing something to pump up our wages. And that's just that economic growth aspect of that I'm so proud that every single one of us at some level are talking about that. Right. That we absolutely have to have the economic growth here. Cost of living will not be as much an issue if we can pump some wages up. I know Brent and I just out on completely separate deals. You've probably had this speech from Cindy Staley down at Habitat.
Yes, sir.
About, I mean, you may have all had this speech by now, but about talking about what the average hourly wage is here versus how much of that gets spent on your home, right? On putting a roof over your head, and that number's too high. It's too high for what we could support here. We got to do something on the wage side of it.
Do you remember what those numbers were?
Oh, somebody help me on those numbers. It was.
I know the numbers.
She had talked about if it was for that you want to be around the 30 to 35%.
That percentage, but we've got people that are spending more than 50%, way over 50%.
Wow.
But I mean, they was talking about the average wage was $14 and some of when we're talking about. But I mean, we've got to have, when we're talking about economic growth here, we don't need another McDonald's. We need something else that people can grow with the company, and I hate to single out, I hate that I mention a name, but I mean, but that's
right.
But that's
I understand where you're going with that. Yeah.
That's what we need. We've got to figure out how do we work ourselves out of this deal. It's not a just cost of living and what can we do on that. It's how do we work ourselves out on the other side of this deal about increasing wages and increasing wage growth in this community.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I've said this for numerous events, even in the debate I mentioned it, because you look at Workforce Solutions data for the economy in Victoria, our cost of living index in Victoria is 98.7% of the national average. The rest of Texas is 94.3%. But yet Victoria's average wage is somewhere about $44,000 and some change. The state average is $56,000, where the national average is $55,000. So the rest of the state does better than the national average. We're down at 44. I've gotten some information back that's very tedious to go through, but I think honestly, when you look at the data, the two biggest problems are the low wages and the high cost of housing. Because I went to that seminar, that the first one at the university had on it, they gave the illustration that many people who are not destitute in Victoria just can't quite make that standard threshold of percentage of income to move into an apartment. Right, yes, sir. I've routinely heard people that tell me that some two-bedroom apartments and things in Victoria are more like $1,200 to $1,300 a month. That's very high. And you talk about the percentage of income that it takes to live here, that's a problem. But once again, one of the best ways to do it is to get this city going and this economy moving, to get these wages up, where that'll help solve part of it. And then when there's more demand out there, people will come in and build more options for people to live in. But it's all about driving our economy. We've got to get our economy moving again. That's the solution that's going to get us out of the doldrums we're in right now. But it's a real problem, and the statistics show it. And what I don't understand, I see what the retail coach says about retail in our community, and they're talking about $3 billion in possible sales here. They say there's 1.4 billion bleeding from Victoria, and yet I look at workforce data, and our whole gross product in Victoria County is only 4.3 billion, and of that, retail is 334 million. So something's not jiving with these numbers. So we've got to figure out which are the accurate numbers and then deal with the problem, because that's a huge disparity.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yes, yes, sir.
Well, if you go back and want to go to the next level of what the real issue is, it's not the cost of living, it's the relative value of living here. And I still contend that comes right back and lands squarely in the lap of VISD. If we had a school district here, which I believe, I enjoy Dr. Shepard, I think he's doing yeoman's work. He hit the ground running, he's a fine man. So all the disclaimers aside, we don't have a school district that just invites people to come in. Nobody moves here to go to VISD. They move here in spite of VISD. So you've got to find a way to hammer down on your education system to the point that people want to move here, that they're willing to pay those taxes, which if you own a home in this town, you pay twice as much to VISD as you do to the city of Victoria. Twice as much to VISD as you do to the city. So it's not a city tax issue, it's a relative value versus the education dollar. If we can raise the level of education value, people don't complain, people come here, people bring their businesses here to get into our schools. You need go no further than Vanderbilt and see people that move out into what we used to call the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Nothing out there. There's still not an HEB out there. They move out there so their kids can go to those schools. So don't tell me that if we have a ripe, perfect, growing, energetic VISD, the rest of it will follow. And then all ships rise on an incoming tide. So that's where we start. Now, can city council affect that? Yes. We can help a lot. We can help a lot. We can do a lot of cooperative work with the district and with the colleges. So I think I'm not passing the buck. I'm accepting the responsibility and identifying the real issue.
Thank you. How are you guys doing on time? Are you guys?
I'm having fun.
You having a few more questions?
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so how are you prepared to represent a diverse population with more women per capita than men and people from various races, cultures, nationalities, and backgrounds? How are you prepared to present a diverse population?
Prepared to represent.
Represent, thank you. Represent. Thank you. Yes.
You want me to take that?
Sure, go ahead.
It's not that hard. We all drive on the same streets.
Yes, sir.
The things that city council and the city government, if you will, the best thing I can do to represent all Victorians is to help get city government out of the way. Get our city government out of the way and let Victoria do what Victoria does. We've always been resilient. We've always been here. We're a strong family-based community of every different race, nationality, religion. It just doesn't matter. We're all Victorians. Harvey showed us that. We went down to Boot Fest a week or not much more than a week after Harvey. It felt like days after Harvey. And the community was out. Everybody, how are you doing? How are you doing? Good, dynamic, energetic leadership can keep that emotion flowing in this city, and we can take this city to the next level. It doesn't matter to me what color, what background, what your culture is. I mean, hey, we've got 2 Thai food restaurants here. I love culture, okay? It's great. So come on, come one, come all, come here and work.
Right.
Come here and get a job and make this city better. And help us get government out of your way. That's what I would do.
Thank you. And for you?
You know, to me, all that those labels do is just divide people. You know, I've come to the conclusion when I look at people, people are people. I want to look at people like God looks at us. When God looks at us, you don't see any of that. And that's the way you should interact with people. And that's why you can I could represent any of them because that's the way I choose to look at people. I don't look at people by their label. I look at people for being the person they are. And everybody is valuable to this community. Everybody contributes to this community. And everybody should be served by their leaders. And I mean served by their leaders and not the other way around.
Thank you.
Well, Brent asked me the other night before we were getting ready to start our debate. He said, "Are you ready for this?" And I told him, I said, "I've been preparing for this my whole life." And there's not a way to prepare. There was nothing really to prepare for this particular event. There was nothing really to prepare for the debate as we had it. We knew we were going to get a 1 minute open and a 1 minute close. That's about all we had to prepare for. So we are all who we are as we sit up here. And I grew up in a community that I graduated from a high school that was more than 50% minority. I mean, I had a colored roommate in college. It's all about when I say I've prepared for this all my whole life, that's what I've been influenced by, all of our various experiences. And so that doesn't even seem like a real question to me. I mean,
Right, I understand. Okay.
it's kind of like asking somebody, if you can't represent, which one of y'all's a bigot?
Right.
You know?
I see. Thank you.
I've lived with this for all my life in higher education. So it's easy to, as Raleigh said, to treat people as people and don't worry about what the color of their skin or their hair or their sex or anything else. I think it's tragic that we don't recognize that women are deserving of the same salaries for the same job that men are. But that's a slow process that we're hopefully making headway on. But it is the case that in dealing with people are people. That's the way, as Raleigh said, God created them and created us. And if we can't live with that, well, then we need to get out. Just quit. But that's an easy question.
Thank you. So I have a couple of more questions just on my own that we've kind of discussed previously. But I'll wait for my final question at the end. But I was going to ask you guys, what do you think is one of the most common misconceptions, or what people don't understand about the role or the responsibilities of a mayor?
Well, you've got two different broad spectrum differences. You've got one group that thinks the mayor is just kissing babies and cutting ribbons and reading proclamations. And you've got another group that thinks that the mayor actually runs the city, which he absolutely does not.
Right.
There's a reason that the mayor makes. I honestly don't know if anybody can clarify. I think it's $300 a month is what the mayor gets for being mayor.
I don't think any of us are in it for that.
And certainly not in it for the mayor.
But let's just set the record straight.
I can tell you that I will spend more on babysitters every month than I would make from being the mayor.
Right.
But the reality is the mayor can set a tone. The mayor can set an expectation of energy. You can represent a dynamic and diverse community. The mayor needs to be able to build coalitions among the council. You need to be able to be first among equals. You need to be able to speak on behalf of those folks. I've been blessed to develop relationships with most of them, as have these guys. That's not a bragging point. We all spend time with them. I'm proud of all of them. I expect to learn from all of them, and I expect to be dynamic enough to hold this new city manager accountable. I think that's key, is that we make sure that the city manager works for the people through the council.
Sure. And
The dog has got to wag the tail, not the tail wag the dog.
So the announcement will be made, I guess, tomorrow in the evening, or the vote, or
understand.
however that
I was
works.
told
Okay,
tomorrow.
So, as I understand it, city manager, works with, or how our government, our city government works here, is that you guys are all part of the city council. There's 7, 8 members. The mayor has the same, 7, thank you. The mayor has the same voting
Correct.
power
Right.
as the city council. So the city manager that's coming in, the city manager cannot be hired or fired, right, as I understand it?
City council can remove them.
City
Yeah,
council.
can remove them,
There's 3 people that the city council hires.
okay,
It's the city manager, the city attorney, and I think the
Municipal judge.
municipal judge.
thank you.
And that's the 3 people that they hire and fire. The rest of it is up to that city manager.
Right,
And the council's job is to give clear and precise guidance, provide the vision for what we want in Victoria, and portray that vision or instill that vision on the city manager, whose job it is to convince his staff to follow that. And the way that it should be done is we do our job, he or she does their job, but they have to be held accountable.
right.
Absolutely.
That's the thing.
But they don't have a term, the way we are, you guys
No.
hold a term
No.
for 3 years, okay?
That's right.
Just
So-
by their contract.
Is this really different? Is this gonna be kind of unique? Have we seen this? I don't think in the 20-something years that I've lived here that we've had a city manager and a new city manager and a mayor, at the same.
Not that I know of. I know this is the
I
first
think
time
it's
in
a
a
great
long, it's a great
Right.
opportunity. It's the
That's
first time in a
great
long time that
incredible.
we've gone outside. We haven't hired from within. So
Right.
I think
So
it's
that's
an
gonna be-
exciting time at the very least.
Right. Do
So-
you know when the announcements were gonna be made? Do we know when that is? Probably
I think
tomorrow.
I think
Say
tomorrow.
tomorrow night.
That's gonna
That's
be
the way I
exciting.
understood
Very
it. I
exciting.
believe what I read in the
That's
paper.
Keep your fingers crossed
Yeah.
Yeah.
that it happens tomorrow night.
So going back to my question, which is, what is something that most people don't know
About what?
about being a
The
mayor? Yeah, the
I think it's
responsibility.
like Brenner said, they think that the mayor can actually run things, and if they have that perception, then they haven't witnessed a proper mayor in
Right.
office yet. Because the mayor sets the tone. The mayor does set the tone. I know when I've been presidents of boards in the past, your job isn't to tell that board what to do. Your job is to inspire that board to do their work.
Right.
You have to incentivize everybody on that council to represent their constituent. And they need to represent their constituent vigorously and forcefully and advocate for them. And so the mayor's job is to guide the group into coming to a consensus on what should be done. And I'm not one of these folks that believes that everything has to, I'm not going to say we can't vote on anything unless it's a 7-0 vote. I don't believe in that type of governance. I believe that each person should vote their heart as they represent their constituency. But at the end, once the vote is taken, whether it's a 4-3 vote, a 5-2 vote, or everybody, then everybody joins hands and you accept that mandate and you move forward. That, to me, is good governance, when you encourage people to debate and discuss
Yes, sir.
and reach consensus.
Thank you. What do you think is something that most people don't understand about the role or responsibility?
Well, we've already talked about what it's not. I mean, you don't run the city, and you don't make a big salary doing it. But what you can do is, as the leader of your community, as the figurehead in that deal, is you can. I had somebody give me this phrase years ago, that you inspect what you expect. And that, so amongst the people that provide the various services within our community, that head up those areas that provide those services, we should be continually inspecting to see, are they meeting our expectations for providing this particular service in my community? And one of the ways that I would also like to see the new mayor, and again, a lot of what I'm throwing out here, I hope that somebody, if it's not me, picks up a tidbit from Steve and decides, I'm going to use this. This would be one tidbit I wish somebody'd pick up on that deal. As we're inspecting what we expect in that deal, we also ask every day of the various people that provide the services in our community, what'd you do today to help Victoria grow? What did you do? Because it's going to take that infrastructure. We're going to have the infrastructure. We're going to have the clean town. We're going to have the town that's in love with itself. We're going to have all of these things. What'd you do today to help us grow? And I think that's a fair question to ask somebody that even is on your police force. It's a fair question to ask somebody that does fire department. So, I mean, that's one of the things I think that as a mayor that you can influence. And that gets back to vision. The mayor's going to lead a vision for this community. And so he's got to be out there reminding people every day what that vision is.
And that really is the biggest role.
That's
is
the biggest
leading
role.
The vision.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
And I don't think a lot of people understand that. I think they watch too much TV and see these mayors that are running New York City or Chicago or whatever.
Right.
And that's not the way it works in Victoria, Texas.
Right.
So I think collaboration, building consensus among your council, including the city manager, and moving forward is what it takes.
Right. Thank you. So, okay, so I have my last question, my fun sort of feet to the fire question that I usually ask. You've got $1 million to spend, free and clear, in Victoria, Texas. How would you spend it? $1 million.
Don't look at me, Dawn. Well, the first thing that jumps to the front, there's a million holes. We can all poke holes in whatever anybody says. I would love to take that $1 million and challenge, whether it be large community businesses or small businesses or people from outside, to match that amount and find a way to maximize the value of Riverside Park. I believe if we could create an environment down there where the whole city was bought in, whether it be a river walk or things to do. When I was a kid, there was a train down there. I think you used to drive it when I was riding. But I look back and I am convinced that if we could spend the money wisely and get the whole city bought in, that is an unbelievable gem for this community that just doesn't, it's just kind of there.
Right.
You know, and I think that somebody might say, well, he's being frivolous with $1 million. Why wouldn't you?
It's your $1 million.
But I think for the benefit of everyone, I wouldn't build another splash pad. I'd probably find a way to put it into Riverside Park.
Thank you. How about you, sir?
Well, there's so much that $1 million could do. I mean, you know, I guess my first inclination would put it into the cotton picking health savings account of our employees. Be a darn good place for it.
Sure.
But there's so many things that we could do, you know, but we need to start really thinking as a community, where are we going to spend millions of dollars? Because it's important. It's important where you prioritize these millions of dollars that we get or the city gets. Because when you prioritize, that's the way you solve problems. I've often thought that much of our problem is we take limited resources and we spread them too thin. In other words, you've got to prioritize stuff. You can't take your eye off the ball over here, but you've got to attack this problem and solve it.
Okay.
And take care of it with that $1 million. And then the next $1 million, you take this. So you have to attack each problem individually, take care of it with that $1 million, and then move on to the next one. But while you're doing it, you have to have the sense of the entirety of what you're trying to accomplish. And that's called long-term, comprehensive, and strategic planning. Is what I do for a living.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For you, sir.
If I got $1 million, of course, $1 million won't fix anything. Actually, it wouldn't fix our Riverside Park, or it wouldn't fix anything like that. But it's like if we got a big chunk of money.
Right.
I'd actually spend it on, I'd give it to our school here in Victoria and ask them to build us some kind of enhanced sports facility. I think it's kind of sad that even like we went through this recent football playoffs and that kind of deal, we didn't have any playoff games here in Victoria. And it's because somebody else's facilities and other places are all got better stuff. But that would be another means of drawing somebody to Victoria.
Right. People
that pass through here, see what's going on here, and I mean, it'd be something cool. So it's outside of the city services, but it's something for our community, and I think it'd be something that would enhance our community.
Very cool. Thank you very much.
I think I'd look, as Brent said, look at ways to maximize that by finding people who will contribute with you, join with you whether it be private industry or whether it be foundations or whether it be other people. And I would like to see our downtown built, rebuilt. It's a beautiful historic downtown, and I think if we had the resources to bring it to the point where something was going on down there all the time. I don't know what that means. We need restaurants, we need art galleries, we need shops. We've got a few people that are making a living down there. I think they're making a living down there. They seem to be. They're still open. And I think we need more of that. And I'd like to see us take that money and there are lots of people that want to preserve history and find some of those who will join with us, match that money, 2 for 1, 1 for 1, 3 for 1, whatever, grants,
Perfect.
and do the downtown.
Well, gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough for the time that you've taken to just, answer some community questions and share your time with me. I'm very, very honored to have you guys here. The one thing that I was going to say, going back to this, want to repeat and reiterate to the public that they do have a voice. There's an opportunity for them to speak during city council meetings that are twice a month. But the best way to get your voice heard is to get out and vote.
That's right.
Vote May
Absolutely.
4th. Yes, absolutely.
Early voting.
We actually like each other.
Yeah,
And-
you can
and-
tell.
And we do have in
It's
common that
very
we all
nice,
care about
yes.
our city, whether we've been here a long time or not a long time.
Right.
We all care. So anytime
It
I can
shows.
hang around these guys, I usually learn something, and it comes in handy.
Good. Yes, well, thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
You have a
you.
beautiful forum, and we love
Thank
your
you.
studio.
Thank you
And
very much.
very nice.
Very nice.
Well, I do appreciate that. April 4th, what?
May
Right at the
May
end.
4th.
May 4th, may the 4th
Early-
be
early
with you.
voting
Yes,
is
thank you.
22nd.
Early voting,
Voting.
22nd. Yes, thank you
And
very
you can
much.
vote by mail.
Thank you,
right
and you
now.
can vote by mail. Excellent. Thank you all so much
fine.
for watching Southbridge Street
Yeah, I was
Live.
gonna close
I-
the meeting.
we're-